So to get the lowdown on that, the man that covers the NFL for ESPN.com like nobody's business, he is the great Sal Pal. He's on the Comcast Business Hotline Beyond Fast. It is Tuesdays with Sal Pal. How you doing, buddy?
Michael, I think you hit the right tone. I think it is one of those days where the NFL and everybody in society is talking about the surge in the virus, hospitalizations, the number of positive tests that are up on a day that is going to be one of the most historic in our country's history. It's hard, obviously, when you're doing your job, whatever job that you're doing, and with the background of the election, to focus on something that's happening in this pandemic that's pretty clear. But that's what the NFL is doing. That's what Dr. Alan Sills is doing, the chief medical officer, Troy Vincent, our own Troy Vincent, who's in charge of the day-to-day game operations for this $25 billion empire. They're all talking about the surge in hospitalizations and positive tests. You saw it with John Elway and Joe Ellis, two executives of the Denver Broncos. Andy Dalton, Baltimore Ravens had an outbreak. They are very concerned, just like the rest of society, that as it gets colder and people are forced indoors and start to commingle a little bit more, that it's going to get bad before it gets any better. And so this is the contingency.
Yeah, it's not very comforting here. Now the bench area, here's what they're doing. The bench area will now expand 60 yards along the sidelines from one 20-yard line to the other to encourage the distancing among players.
If you leave the bench and go on the field, you have to have your mask. So after the game, everybody's got to have their mask on.
Yes, pre-game, post-game interactions on the field, locker room, you have to wear the mask. Now, they did some contract tracing, too. So the contract tracing has led to some high-risk players. So what's the lowdown on that? I know A.J. Dillon and Marlon Humphrey, positive test Sunday morning. Then the league determined the Packard players had close contact with Dillon, and 6 people from the Ravens had it with Humphrey. So they have to isolate for how long?
5 days. So that puts a lot of people, it's going to be hard to play these games when you have contract tracing and you have quarantine for 5 days. You can't come to the facility. Obviously, it's different for starters than it is for backups, but it puts everybody on at risk. And they're talking about expanding the playoffs if they have to start canceling these games. They've moved a lot of games around. They're very concerned that they will have to start canceling some games because, again, they're just going on based on what's happening in society, and they're seeing the results within their own teams. So it's, and I'm out there, Mike. It's for me, it's not a bubble situation. I'm not a reporter covering the NBA in a bubble in Orlando. I'm going from city to city. I'm staying in hotels. I am driving, but there are guys who are flying. And I can tell you there's a lot of people who have let their guard down because they have COVID fatigue. And for somebody who is out there all the time, like myself, interacting with people who are interacting with people, it's a very stressful and precarious situation for a lot of folks.
I can see where it would be for you after what you just described. So, I'm curious to know what protocol your company's laying down, or what's your fear factor?
Well, it's not really. I'm concerned that I'm going to give it to somebody in my family. That's the most. I'm knock on wood, a pretty healthy guy. So, I'm very, very conscious. I'm always wearing a mask. I am always trying to separate myself from my colleagues, which is also stressful. I'm always following the rules. Last night, I did back-to-back games, Sunday Night Football in Philly, Monday Night Football at MetLife. There were fans in Philly, none at MetLife, different protocols for different states. MetLife Stadium last night was creepy and surreal. Now here you have this giant stadium that was completely empty. And if you listen to what Bruce Arians said after the game about his football team, because when you don't have fans, football's a game of passion. He said we had a hard time finding our energy. We did not find energy fast enough in the game. And you're traveling a long distance. You're coming from Florida. You're going to New York. You're playing in an empty stadium. You can hear the sound of your own hoofbeats on the ground. It's pretty disconcerting to the players. I mean, no one wants to cry a river for these guys, but they are trying to do their jobs within the confines of the pandemic, just like all of us are. So within that realm and their realm, you have to assess what these guys are going through. And I can tell you a lot of them feel the stress of being tested every single day. Every team has got 100-plus people being tested every day. That's 3,200-plus tests a day in the NFL. That's a lot of people getting tested and a lot of people under stress not to get the virus. And it's beginning to wear on a lot of teams, especially those teams, Mike. Look at the teams that don't have hope, that may have lost a quarterback or a key player or have only one win. Those teams, you can tell the difference between the teams that think they have a shot and those that don't.
Well, so explain the play, like the playoff protocol that it just in case they have to do it differently. Explain what that's going to be like. That will just be no buys and seeding like what we see in the NBA playoffs, correct?
I think they're working it out. I think the competition committee is working it out. It's a work in progress. But they have put the owners on notice. I mean, basically, it's a two-way thing. The owners went to the competition committee and said, look at this, and what would we have to do? What's the best course of action? Because the bottom line is this. They want to play that Super Bowl on, I believe it's February 7th, right? That first Sunday. They want to play that Super Bowl on February 7th. They don't want to move it back for a lot of different reasons. They want to go ahead with. That's why they announced. I was talking to NFL executives who were at the Eagles game on Sunday night, and they were saying, yeah, the Super Bowl plans have started. They are in the works. They're trying to work out having 20% fan capacity in Tampa so they don't put any kind of stress on Hillsborough County in Tampa. For medical and first responders, if there is any kind of major outbreak in Florida that forces multiple hospitalizations and the hospitals are overrun. So the NFL is super cognizant of it, city by city, state by state. They're trying to do the right thing, but they're also trying to keep their business open. They're doing basically what everybody else is doing. We're all trying to do the same thing. Do the right thing, but stay in business.
All right. Of course, the plan would be there would be 4 division champs, 4 wildcard teams. So it'd be 1, 8, 2, 7, 3, 6, 4, 5, and if it has to get to that. Now let me move to
but
the
that
Eagles.
Could change. I think what the biggest thing is that they would expand the playoff size. The number of teams that would be going to the playoffs would be 16, so that a team wouldn't get cheated out of the playoffs because they lost out on a game.
Yeah.
So this is the calculus on this is not easy. Somebody's feelings are going to get hurt. Yeah. Let's just say that going in.
All right.
Somebody's feelings are going to get hurt. But here's the thing: you have a division like the NFC East where everybody's under 500, and one of those teams is going to go to the playoffs, and a team that's over 500 in the NFC is going to be out of luck.
All right, let's move to the Eagles and the reaction.
Sure.
They won 23-9. They covered, right? But the consensus feeling is yuck. And also the consensus feeling is the quarterback and the coach are falling short of what the fan base expects. What are your thoughts on what you saw?
Carson Wentz. Let's start with this, Michael. I've done a lot of research planning for this conversation with you. Here's what stands out for me and what I want people to focus on. This is important. Carson Wentz has 16 turnovers this season. That's more than 30 teams. More than 30 teams. The only team that has the only full team in the NFL right now that has more turnovers than Carson Wentz is the Dallas Cowboys. Now, you and I can go through a litany of excuses and reasons why. Let's list 2. Let's list 3 of them. Offensive line injuries, poor game planning by the head coach, revolving door at the wide receiver position. But you know what? It's time to stop making excuses for the quarterback. He has the ball in his hands. He was paid over $100 million. He is a smart, responsible young man in every part of his life. He needs to be smart and responsible when he gets on the football field with the football. Am I making any sense?
Listen, you're echoing what we've been saying. At least I've been saying with Carson. But here's
the thing is, the buck has to stop. It's like we can talk about Doug and this, that, and the other thing, and the nuances of play calling and the game planning and the tactics involved. But the buck has to stop with the guy who has the ball in his hands the most and is paid the most money. That's the way the world works. That's the way big boys and I asked a guy who I really respect. I said, what's the problem? Leaders must play like leaders, and he's not playing like a leader.
Let me ask you this, though, because he's not playing like a leader. You're absolutely right. Everything you just said about him is absolutely right. Is he capable of learning not to do those things? It's now 5 years, and that's what I'm worried about, that he'll never get it for some reason, whether it's because he's spooked here playing under this condition where Hurts is whatever it is. Do you see this guy reaching what he's supposed to be here?
He's got 8 weeks to prove it. That's my answer to you. He, in my view, hey, I'm saying something to you I never said before. Nobody's been a big supporter of Carson Wentz in this town in the media than me. Nobody's been a big supporter of Doug Peterson on this show, on this program, on the Mike Missanelli program than me. Have they? Is there one?
No.
They got 8 weeks to get it right. They're on the clock, Mike. I think they're on the clock, without a doubt. They got 8 weeks to figure it out. Now, at the end of the year, if they don't figure it out, I think they have to all get together and say, okay, now what do we do? Do we say this was just a matter of, listen, this is a season that killed everybody because of the pandemic, and we're going to have forbearance and forgiveness, and we're going to try it for one more year. These are the problems. We're going to try to fix it. Or do we go in another direction? I think he's got 8 weeks. And Mike, if he ends the year with 35 turnovers, can't have it, Mike. How can you have that? And how would the fan base take it seriously if you decided that was okay?
No, not in this
town.
town.
Of course not. If he has so he's got 8 more games. If he doubles the number of turnovers and the team does not make the playoffs, what do we have? And what are you going to try to sell to this fan base with a straight face in January? This fan base that has stood by this team and got one Super Bowl championship in the last 60 years. What are you going to say to this fan base? That it's okay, we're going to give it one more shot? No, of course not. You're going to have to stand in front of the microphone and say, we're reassessing everything. Aren't you going to have to say that?
And there's no question about it. Now, it might bleed into next season where that decision happens, and but I hear you. I hear you about the clock being on. Sal, tremendous.
I'm not wrong about that.
No, you're absolutely right. I totally agree with you.
We're on the clock. Are we not on the clock?
Yes, and he's on the clock. There's no question the quarterback is.
I mean, he's got to stop. I mean, he's got the ball in his hands. He can control the turnovers. Nobody else can control it. Not Jason Kelsey, not Press Taylor, not Howie Roseman, not Christina Lurie, nobody.
Christina Lurie?
Well, I just threw that in there to be funny.
All right, man. Listen, good stuff. Tuesday with Sal. We'll talk to you.
See you.
All right, there he is. Sal Palantonio on the Comcast Business Hotline.
Mike Missanelli, afternoons from 2 to 6 on 97.5 The Fanatic, Philadelphia.